Hello and welcome to Amrita by the Book. My name is Amrita. This is my booktube, and today I've been tagged to do the School Days book tag by Sunny Luca, who I think is Exhibit 1 in what I mean when I say that some people just have a good vibe to them. I love her videos, I love her channel, I love the way she talks about books, I love the calm of her presence that she brings to her videos. It's always a very relaxing time. This tag was originally composed by What Victoria Read, and I'm going to link down to both her and Sunny down below, and you should check both of them out. Right, question 1. Tell us about a book that got you into reading. I honestly don't think that there is a book or the first book that I can point to, because as far as I can remember, I've always been reading. So what I actually have is the memory of the first things that I was attempting to read on my own, and that would be my dad's comics. I think maybe my dad was a bit unusual for, like an Indian man of his generation, but he really loved like old school comics. I'm talking like Flash Gordon, Mandrake the Magician, The Phantom. And I remember being transfixed by the images and the art in those books. I especially remember the Flash Gordon comics, which were amazing. And to this day, when I think of a spaceship, I think rocket and I think of Flash Gordon. And it's also the reason why, I sometimes do like ESL training, which is English as a Second Language training. And I always tell my learners that if you are going to read things to improve your English and you don't like traditional books, so to speak, then try comics, because that worked for me and that really engendered a love of reading in me. So maybe that'll work for you too. Question 2, break time. What is the book that you had to most recently take a break from or DNF? And this is The Gilded Ones. I spoke about this in my April wrap-up. I think it's going to be an amazing book. I think I want to read it. So I'm really taking a break from it. I did not DNF it, but it just came in the middle of all these other books that were super intense and painful and sad, and I really read a whole bunch of books in a row in which the female character had to go through immense amounts of torture, both mentally and physically, and I really couldn't take it anymore. Like, I needed something happier, I needed something a little less intense, and so I began The Gilded Ones, and then about a chapter in, I was like, nope, can't do this right now. But the little that I did read, I really enjoyed, and I think, I didn't enjoy it, but I thought the prose was really good. So I do want to go back and finish it, and I've heard really good things about it. Everybody has been hyping it up on my feed, in personal recommendations to me. Everyone keeps asking me if I've read it. So I definitely think that this is something that would appeal to me, just not now. Next, lunchtime. Tell us about your favorite book that features food. So my instinct with this prompt is to give you like a non-fiction recommendation, which would be, the smart thing to do. I have so many things that I can recommend, from everyone from like Anthony Bourdain to Mother Joffrey. I mean, there are a lot of food writers out there who've written amazing books. But actually, I read a book fairly recently that I thought was really great, and that was Accidentally Engaged. And it's about a young woman in Canada who comes from like an Indian Aga Khani background, and she really wants to bake bread, like that's a big dream. And instead, she's sort of caught up in the family business and the family dynamics. And I thought it was funny, it was cute, it has a love story that is very sweet. And eventually she finds her way to becoming a baker. And I thought like that was fun. I am all about the happy recommendations right now. I'm not kidding when I told you that I've had it up to here with all the misery. Final Bell, which is the book that you have finished reading most recently? And that would be She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I received an advanced reader copy of this. It's coming out in July, I believe. And it is one of those books that I mentioned that was really intense and had a lot of physical and mental torture and anguish involved. But it is also one of the most interesting books that I've ever read in my life. So the thing about me is that I love history. I love it as a subject. I like to read nonfiction and fiction about history, and I really enjoy alt history as long as it's done really well. And this is an excellent version. Shelley Parker Chan takes the story of the founding of the Ming Empire in China in the 14th century, I believe, and then she turns it into this queer retelling that has so many big emotions attached to it. Right from the very first chapter, it felt like somebody had just pushed me off a cliff and I didn't have a parachute and I was just hurtling into the abyss, and it was exhilarating. It's a fictional take on two real life characters. Like, these are people who actually lived in history, but you know, the way that she interprets them and their motivations and who they were as people is obviously all fantasy, and it's a reimagining, but it's pretty amazing. Highly recommend. But make sure that you're in a good emotional space before you read it, because whew, it's tough. Next is homework. What was the last nonfiction book that you read and enjoyed? And I think that has to be the Avidly Read series with Guilty Pleasures by Ariel Zibrock. Again, I mentioned that in my April wrap-up, so I'm not going to talk too much about it here, especially because I am planning to do a panel discussion for that book in June with Rosie and Katie. And honestly, there is going to be so much to discuss with this book. I enjoyed it so much. I laughed like a loon through like a whole bunch of it, but it was also smart and it made me think about things, and yeah, it's going to be a lively discussion, and I highly recommend that you don't miss it. Next, Staff Room. Tell us about a book that you like to go to when you need to take a breath. So my answer to this is always the same. It's either the Wheel of Time series or else it is something written by Georgette Heyer. But you know, like, I don't go to any random book by either of these people. I go to very specific things, and I thought it might make sense for me to just tell you about one specific Heyer novel that I read when I want to just cheer myself up, and that would be The Black Sheep. Black Sheep is about this woman who is, you know, she's a spinster lady, which means that she's in her mid to late 20s, and she lives in Bath, and you know, she has a sister, a niece, like everything is very proper, and she's living a rather blameless life. She's actually quite pretty, and she does have a number of offers on the table for marriage, but she would rather not because she's independently wealthy. And you know, she just never met anyone that made her want to get into that whole like marriage thing. And then her entire world is upended when she bumps into this really rude man who's just arrived in England back from India, where he had been sent to seek his fortune. And he doesn't really look like he's found a fortune, but what he has lost in India is all his manners. And they basically have this sort of mistaken identity meeting, and then they end up just bantering back and forth, and it is some of the funniest, most wittiest banter that I have ever read in my life. It is delightful, and I also like the fact that they are mostly age appropriate. I mean, he's in his 40s, she's in her late 20s, so really not that age appropriate, but it's a lot better than some of the other books that you could read about that same time period. For my subject question, I'm going to be choosing geography. Describe a book with a great sense of place or world building. And for me, this has to be Master of Jinn by P. Jelly Clark. It is fabulous. Like, Cairo, this alt history Cairo, has never appealed to me more. I mean, I've always wanted to go to Cairo. I've always wanted to go to Egypt. It's never really worked out for me because every time I make like concrete plans, something or the else happens in that particular part of the world, and then I have to cancel my plans. But one day I will go. And in the meantime, I get to read about this alt Cairo where there are angels and ghouls and jinns and colonizers and just really smartly dressed women detectives. I mean, it's so great. If you haven't seen my review of the book, then it is now live on my channel. I highly recommend you check it out. A, because I want you to really read this book because it is amazing. But also, why aren't you watching my book reviews? They're really good. My next subject is history, and that is which 3 historical novels have you most enjoyed? And obviously, I can't make a decision like that. I am going to instead talk about a couple of series that I have reviewed right here on my channel if you're interested, because they're really great. One is the Matthew Shardlake series, which is a murder mystery series that is set in the times of Henry VIII and then Elizabeth I, and it is just intensely, meticulously researched and plotted, and they are amazing. I will also recommend the Sebastian Sincere series, and they are Regency set murder mysteries again, but these are Regency era novels that you are unlikely to have ever read before because it really focuses on the grime of the era rather than all the Jane Austen-esque balls and, you know, pretty chiffons and cottons and muslins and what have you. That sounds really grim, but honestly, they're really great murder mysteries and the characters are amazing, and it really gives you a great sense of place and time if you like historical fiction. I'm also going to give a shout out, and this is actually the most proper answer to this prompt, to MMK's Shadow of the Moon, which is a giant epic romance saga that is set in 19th century India during the time of what Indians like to call the First War of Independence, and the British called the Mutiny of 1857. And it was basically the first like real large scale bloody uprising that began in the Indian army. Again, that sounds like really grim, but it's honestly such a very well researched novel. It's based on the personal diary of KAYE's own great uncle or somebody who was posted in India at the time, and he, you know, like all British officers at the time, he kept a personal diary in which he would record what was happening day to day. And I have a lot of feelings about it. I have a lot of memories that are associated with this book, and I spoke about it on the Your Favorite Book podcast, link down below. If you're in the mood for a giant piece of literature that is also really romantic and historical in scope, then check out the episode down below and then, you know, buy the book. And my last prompt is music. Which reading format do you think has the best rhythm for reading? And I chose this question because it was really interesting, and the moment I'd read it, I was like, oh, I have thoughts about this. I didn't know I had thoughts about it. Because it's very different when you're talking about reading rhythm as opposed to, you know, how something feels in your hands. So a lot of people that say, oh, I would rather read a hardback or a paperback or a an ebook. They're really talking about things like convenience. They're talking about the feel, sometimes the smell, because we can be weirdos like that. I mean, you like books, you know what I'm talking about. But honestly, when we talk about rhythm, I think the ebook has possibly the best rhythm to it. But it has to be an ebook on a Kindle. Like, it can't be on the Kindle app. Like, I don't think it has the same rhythm if I'm reading it on a tab or if I am reading it on an iPad or something like that. Like, it doesn't really convert that way. But I feel like if I'm reading it on an actual Kindle, then it actually feels better and I read better. Like I can get into the flow of the story better for some reason, you know? Like I read faster, I get into the story a little bit faster, and I have a good sense of where I am in terms of page length and how much I need to finish. But isn't that an interesting question? Like I'd really like to know, like, what are your favorite reading formats? And you know, is it a rhythm thing? Like according to rhythm, what is your favorite reading format? Because I feel like the answer might be different, you know, from like your usual, like what is your favorite format? So that was my school days book tag. Thank you, Sunny, for tagging me. It's always a pleasure. And I am going to tag Bethan and Margaret and Lady Jane Books. 3 ladies that I really enjoy and whose channels you should check out. Thank you all for watching, and as usual, if you like this tag and you're not on BookTube, then no worries, do it on your blog, do it in the comments, do it on Twitter, wherever you like, and just let me know so I can come check it out. And in the meantime, I wish you happy reading until next time. For more videos, please hit the subscribe button.